Atari just reinvented the video game.
Atari Unlimited. Atari Unlimited. Atari Unlimited.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another journey into the vast universe of the Atari. It's Atari Unlimited. I'm your good buddy, your good pal, Amigo Aaron, whose appetite is unlimited, joined by everyone's favorite. It's the Brent.
Hello, me. How am I doing today?
You're doing great.
Apparently so.
You look like $100, Brent.
Wow. Unfortunately, with the inflation the way it is, that isn't saying much.
I should say 100 pesos. So, if you joined us on the last Atari show, we had a good time, and amongst the things we did was look at adventure. Well, this time, we're taking that one step further because we're going to look at another adventure. In this case, it's the Atari Adventure Centers, something I literally did not know existed until this week.
Yeah.
Brent, what do you, I mean, this is a topic that you know a little bit more about than I do.
Correct.
What puts, when you go down this road
Sure.
of putting together a big center, what do you think is key? What's a key element of any of these big gaming centers?
The middle.
No.
No, this is, the much like arcades are today.
Yeah.
They were trying to say, look at what we can do here. Why don't you come out and see us? And you do that with big, flashy arcade machine and bigger than life entertainment. And for me, I know I used to travel hundreds of miles to go to different VR experiences. The ones I can think of right off the top of my head was when you could play MechWarrior 2 in a big simulator, and it had all the screens around you, and that was awesome. I had a lot of time. I know you didn't like it, but I thought it was
so. Let's talk about this. That's a good place to start.
okay.
This VR center, as it was termed, was in Indianapolis.
Yes,
Not close to us. Hours and hours. Suppose 7 hours.
not quite that long.
It's a long drive, everybody. And if you've ever ridden up at Indianapolis, that's a thrill ride its own self because people drive like it's Indy 500. And the roads are like Moon Patrol. So we get up to this mall, I believe, where this thing was located. And Brent's been hyping this thing for 7 hours. I've never seen it. So we go in there, and I was underwhelmed for two reasons. One, it just didn't look like, I thought it would look like the inside of a mech. And two, it cost a fortune. It was super pricey.
It was
So I only had enough money to play it one time. That's all I got to play it. But I mean, still, it's a perfect example of instead of just having a video game, you've got an experience that you can't normally play at home.
Yeah, I mean, even on a smaller scale, going to the arcades to play like 8-link Daytona 500 was always fun, was always a good time. And I still go to the arcades nowadays for some of those bigger experiences.
It's funny. I was at Dave & Buster's Arcade, which is a big chain of arcade restaurants in America, and maybe all over the place. And it's almost all experiences. And there's not like you're not going to roll up and play Galaga, but you will roll up to a machine that will play Galaga on a screen that's the size of a huge wall.
Yeah.
Made up of like light bulbs, and you can also play like Miss Pac-Man on there. And the control panel is huge. That's what everything's over the top. Lots of massive quarter pushers. Like we played a Godzilla VR ride, which was a rail shooter. These are the things that are passing for arcades today. Big event arcades, but this was the same concept. It's not like they just drew up this stuff up. This was the same stuff we were talking about, just like with the Daytonas, just like with the MechWarrior area. They used to be, I used to go to these places that had like the arcade machines that would fully rotate, like G-Lock, or something like that, or a Space Harrier, which we just found out had these same cabinets over in Japan. Like, I don't know if you ever rode in one of these things. I had a couple goes in them. And they're fun, but it's an experience you can't get at home. Something else. Remember when you used to go to the mall and they had these shuttle things you used to get into for like thrill rides?
Yes.
I've seen those at a couple arcades too.
Yes.
I remember playing Beachhead 3D in this VR headset gimmick I believe Amiga was running that one. Amiga ran a couple of these to VR experiences, but again, something you can't get at home. That's the gimmick.
Yeah.
I mean, and plus you could also throw in the classic stuff, your skee balls, your big ticket
Amusement
redemption stuff.
games.
Yeah, that stuff all fits in, but not regular arcade games for the most part.
Well, Aaron, Atari Adventure was a concept along those lines, but completely different.
All right,
And
explain.
I want to talk to you just a little bit about this. This was a concept. The actual launch was in 1982 in California, Santa Clara, California. And it actually was put on site at the Marriott Great American Amusement Park.
Okay.
But the plan Atari had was to put these all over the country. And they did, but we'll get to that. So what were these amusement centers? What were you expecting to get when you get in? Well, first of all, you've got your arcade. Atari, of course, had tons of arcade games, and they were trying to find a way to really put them on display. And they wanted arcades that were just their games, or mostly their games. I don't think they were totally against other people's stuff, but it was stuff that Atari had at least touched.
Right.
But they wanted more than that. So they had interactive movie walls. And these came in two different flavors. Flavor one was you'd have these huge movie wall-size displays where you could play games. But the cooler aspect was you went through a corridor to get to this wall. And as you were in the corridor, it was taking pictures of people as they went through. And then it would run it through a filter and put you digitized on the wall. So it'd be like a little pixelated you running around.
So like Journey.
Sort of.
Yeah.
But not, no. It wasn't a digitized, it was a pixelated version of you.
Really?
Yes. Some other cool
So it was like graphic effect.
Yes, exactly.
And they did that on the fly.
Well, that was, I'm assuming, because the technology is, of course, way since gone. I'm assuming they actually ran a filter over the footage of someone walking to make it look more video game-ish. I don't think they took and actually pixelated people.
Before you get too deep into this, what
Sure.
years were these things beginning their operation?
1982.
So this would be really old technology.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So what else did these amusement centers, what were they planning to offer? Computer courses. Sit down and
Wow.
do and learn computer courses.
Really?
You would
I
pay.
expect that.
You would pay for X amount of hours.
Yeah.
And you would go to X amount of courses. And we're talking stuff like programming, banking, word processing, and you would do it all on Atari computers. Okay?
Yeah, I see the angle.
What other experiences did they have? Well, they tried to incorporate all of the senses. So they had a tunnel that you would go through and you would touch different places on this digital wall. And when you touched it, it would make an Atari linked sound. So you would go through and you touch the wall and everyone's touching the wall. And then the computer takes all the notes, all the things that were touched, turns it into music and plays it as you're exiting the tunnel. So it was
That sounds
different.
pretty cool.
It was
too.
different every time, and it wasn't just noise because it didn't just take everyone's tapping and then play it as a sound effect. It basically took the instruments or sound effects that people were touching and kind of making it into a song. What else did they do, Aaron? This is one of the first cyber cafes. You could go into this thing and rent computer time.
You mean like that was like via modem or something?
We'll talk about that in just a moment.
Oh,
Aaron.
okay, I'm sorry.
But I'm talking about you sit down and you say, I want to be able to use this computer to do whatever I want for the next hour. You pay your fee, bam, there you go. You sit down and rent the computer for that hour.
What do you do on it?
Anything you want.
Do you need to bring your own software?
No, they have a software library already ready to go.
Wow.
Uh,
Pretty good too. This place sounds great so far.
What else could you do? It had a cafeteria,
Yeah.
so you could get your food. It had
Not a restaurant, a cafeteria. So that was the style of the time.
Yeah.
Cafeteria.
Yeah, it had rides is probably overstating what it was. You would sit down, and as you're playing your games, it shook the seat, kind of like the seats with the subwoofers under it. That sort of
A
feel.
haptics type
Yeah.
thing. I got it.
They had that available. They had, and this was the brilliant thing. They were doing merchandising.
All right.
Merchandising, Aaron.
No
Merchandising.
surprise
Where
there.
the real money from Atari is made.
I see.
So you could go in and buy, different jackets and pins and collectibles and that sort of thing. All of this was at the one in California. And they said, we have got all this awesome stuff in California. How are we going to tie this in to the rest of the world? Atari Tell, Aaron. Atari Tell. Now, this is probably worthy of its own show, but I'll just hit the high points. This was modem-to-modem communication across the country where two Ataris were talking to each other. Did it work well? Not that I've heard.
What did they do to each other?
I don't know, but the Atari Adventure Centers were linked to each other using Atari Tell.
So,
Sort of.
so
I don't
you're
know
not
if they
talking about BBS or anything.
No, I'm talking about communication to communication from center to center.
One would wonder what one would be talking about. Now, was this something that had to be dialed, or was this?
Yes, they were.
We don't know.
They were modems.
Right.
They were modems. So I'm assuming that at some point they were dialing into each other, but I don't think they expected the patrons to actually dial in. I think you sat down and it was already connected to another computer.
We have to look into that. That might. Who knows?
Now, did Atari? Like I said, did Atari Tell work? I don't know. For this application, I don't think they ever got it off the ground to any dizzying heights, because Atari Adventure didn't get off the ground to many dizzying heights.
That's it.
While there were hundreds of these the centers planned, only about a handful, maybe a dozen, got actually put in. They had locations at Disneyland in California.
Yeah.
They had a location in Florida, St. Anne, Missouri, St. Louis, Missouri,
St. Anne, Missouri.
Las Vegas, Nevada, 2 places in Las Vegas. Duluth, Georgia had a place.
Yeah.
Key West, Florida had a place, and a place in Mississippi. Those all had adventure centers to varying quality.
Was there a West Virginia one planned at any point?
Absolutely not. Now, here's the thing when I say varying quality.
Yeah.
Obviously, the one in Santa Clara, California, was the mothership.
So I guess the dud would have been the one in Missouri.
The other places had less stuff,
Yeah.
but one gimmick that the other place didn't have.
I see.
Any of the ones that were located on amusement parks were like the ones in California. Although California was the crown jewel, it was the only one that got the full treatment.
Yeah.
The other ones were at malls, sort of like a mall arcade.
All right.
But the gimmick there is it was a storefront. So you could go in, you could play your arcade games, you could rent your computers. The ones in the storefront, you could play on the computers for free.
Yeah.
You didn't have all the software options they would just have something loaded up. You could sit down and play it.
All right.
But the gimmick at those places where they were trying to sell you Ataris. So it was an arcade where they were trying to sell you things.
Sneaky.
Their goal through all of this was to have an Epcot type feel
Yeah.
for computers. They wanted to say, here's the technology we have. Here's a look into the future with like Atari Tell, that sort of stuff. Keep coming back. We're always going to be updating. But something went wrong.
Yeah.
And is in part the crash, the American video game crash. Now, why was this a big deal? Well, a lot of the push for these amusement centers was through their parent company, Warner Brothers.
Right.
And when Warner Brothers stepped out of the picture, you know who that brought in? That was old Jack Tramiel.
Jack attack.
And let me tell you, he attacked the sinners with both fistuses.
Wasn't I a fan of the Atari Adventure Center? That's what you're saying.
So he was not. So this all went down about the same time that Atari's other stuff was going down. By 1985, there was already talks for Atari to get out of these kind of centers. By the end of 85, going into 86, and especially by 88, because of legal stuff, blah, 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 Atari was completely out of these things. The centers in some places still remain, and they were no longer called Atari Adventure. They were called Adventure Centers.
Okay.
Under new ownership, some of them maintain their same sort of, we have computers, come in, rent them, that kind of stuff. But a lot of them just switched over to being either retail spots or arcades with an emphasis on the arcade stuff. And those actually ran all the way up until 1990, where that was when the last of these kind of faded away. So it was a short, the Atari Adventure Centers, the Atari Video Adventure Centers were a short-lived gleam in the eye of this wondrous land where you can go learn technology, interact with it through sound and sight, get some food court food themed off of video game stuff, and really make a whole day, a whole journey of it. And it just came at the worst time.
You know, one would wonder, because, I mean, if they started one, and assumably the California site, the first one, was successful enough to warrant this expansion.
Sort of. It was always planned to have multiple locations. So these sort of dropped at the same time. The ones that opened all kind of opened at the same time. It's just the one that was attached to the Marriott was also jointly owned something with Warner Brothers, so that's why they got the extra push. And the ones that were on Disney properties were gobbled up by Disney assets.
Yeah.
So those got changed immediately into other things.
This to me, though, hearing, I've been to Epcot, which you compare it to.
Sure.
And one of the things about Epcot's a sort of a sister park to Disney in Florida, but it wasn't envisioned as that. I mean, that's a whole other story. But
Sure.
I've been there, and it sounds like this would have a similar problem, which is this place sounds awesome to go to one time, and then you don't never need to go back. That sounds like the problem to me, because this stuff sounds great for like 4 or 5 hours one day, and then you're done.
Well,
There's no, and if you said they were going to keep updating it, but I'm guessing that probably didn't happen.
yeah, I don't think they end up.
Ultimately, so when you don't update your stuff, there's no reason for me to come back again, and then you're boned.
Sure. And another thing I think was they felt they would not be able to draw crowds on their own. That's why none of these were standalone things. They were either put into theme parks or they were put into malls, that kind of locations. So it was all based off the fact that they had to feed off of other things.
Well, I've got a subject matter that kind of dovetails into this. I'm going to take the helm here.
Absolutely.
For the second half of this, which is, we talked about earlier that what an experience like this is after are big ticket items, something you cannot do at home, and something that is unique. Now, Atari had a vision for this place, but the vision did include video games. And I think this is not officially tied in, but I think we can assume that this particular game would have been something they would have had in mind for the Adventure System. Because we talked amongst ourselves, like, what are we gonna talk about that will dovetail into this for a game. And the game we chose, and I think this is a pretty good selection, is the game of Firefox. If you've not played Firefox, it's by far it's one of Atari's most unique arcade games for a bunch of reasons. But before you get into the game Firefox, let's talk about the film Firefox, which is 100% intertwined with the game, and I'll explain why in a moment. Firefox was a movie that was released in the States in the summer of '82. This was based on a book, believe it or not, by Craig Thomas, and directed, produced by, and starring Clint Eastwood. Now, if you don't know who Clint Eastwood is, he was Dirty Harry. He was in all the great spaghetti westerns, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Quick and the Dead, all his movies. So by this time, he was one of, if not the most popular and highest paid actors in the U.S. and probably in the world. The plot of the movie is pretty important to the game. So just to briefly go over the plot. So the movie follows a Vietnam pilot who's recruited for a top secret mission to go to the Soviet Union to steal a revolutionary Soviet fighter jet called the Firefox. That's where the name comes from. Now, the Soviets developed this thing quicker than America had anticipated, so we got scared. In '82, the Cold War was live and in color. I was there. So this is one of those Cold War deals. The Firefox was a nearly unstoppable airplane that was capable of Mach 6 speeds, advanced stealth, and it's my favorite bit in the movie. You could fire weapons and stuff with your mind. Do we want that in an advanced fighter? That seems like a terrible idea. What if you've got indigestion or if somebody accidentally hit you in the groin? You could be shooting missiles all over the place. There goes Toledo, Anyway, so long story short, that's the basis of the film. Getting Clint Eastwood into Russia, getting Clint Eastwood near the plane, stealing the plane, and escaping with the plane. All right, so that's pretty much all you need to know about that. How'd the movie do? It had a budget of 21 mil. It made 47 mil. So they call it a mild success. There was no Firefox 2. I'll put it that way. So, and I mean, when you think of Clint Eastwood movies, like on the upper echelon of it is not Firefox. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I'm just saying it's a movie. So Atari was like, holy smokes, this sounds better than 10 Super Bowls. We want to get involved in this. Oh, by the way, it was distributed by Warner Brothers. I should mention that. And so, it came to pass, Firefox, the arcade game. Now, they knew right away they didn't just want to put together some, normal game. They wanted an epic game. And so they thought, hey, we better go to the money bank on this one. Firefox is Atari's one and only attempt at Laserdisc games. Now, you know us. Nobody loves Laserdisc games more than us. We're dumb. We love them, can't get enough of them. And so, of course, they were super hot at the time, and we got this at our local gold mine when it came out. This, of course, was developed and published by Atari. It was designed by a couple fellas, a pretty good pedigree. One of them's name was Dave Thurr. You may know him. I mean, yeah, you know him he designed 4-Player Soccer. He also was involved with, because he designed it, Missile Command. Not bad. Right? Seems appropriate.
Yeah.
The other designer, Mike Hawley, this guy's got a resume from here till doomsday. But just to give you some of the high points, he designed Star Wars, Gravatar. He was involved with Area 51, game design of Gauntlet Dark Legacy. I mean, he was all up in it, right? And he worked on a ton of Atari games. So these guys didn't just fall off the turnip truck when it came to making this game. They knew right away what they needed, and so they went over to the Warner Archive immediately to look at all the footage that was in the film. they went through, according to the people involved, they went through 20 to 30 hours of movie footage. The majority of it from the end of the movie were flyover footage because they had to have footage for the game. So pretty much all the footage in the game is stuff that was not necessarily in the movie, but it was stuff that they shot for the movie.
B-roll that they didn't use.
Well, I mean, you're not going to use all of it because
Sure.
there's so much of
You
it.
would only do that in a music video.
Right. And so in the movie, he's trying to smuggle this thing out of Russia, and it's an Arctic weather. And so a lot of the footage was based on that. And so that's what you ended up getting in the game. Also Clint Eastwood was heavily involved in the game. Heavily. All right. So I bet this is in fact, I got a lot of this from the Clint Eastwood archive. And let me tell you something. This is the only game on the Clint Eastwood archive. All right. So in the game, and we'll get to the game proper, but in the game that you are fighting, amongst the other things you fight are prototype versions of Firefox. And they managed to get this footage because Clint Eastwood had the only model of the Firefox like at his house. So he brought it in. So anytime you see the Firefox on the screen, when you're not seeing something from the film, it's because they use this model. They took pictures of all these different everything in this is pictures they took models of to put in the game. So the game is different from every Atari game because it's a Laserdisc game, but it's also different from pretty much every laser game. Why? Atari developed a technology. They use a one-of-a-kind Laserdisc in this, and among the things it can do is it doesn't have any downtime. If you've played any Laserdisc game, which most of them, if not all of them, use commercial Laserdisc systems. This one was Atari designed all this stuff, and it had the ability to deliver video throughout the game without any downtime. I think the only parts of it that there might be a little loading is, and you don't see it, is when there are the little cut scenes that are in the game, which we'll talk about. So the game has two different models. There's a stand-up model, which is the only one I ever saw. And then you've got this elaborate cockpit model. And if you see the posters for this game, there's a guy in the full suit with a bubble helmet standing there going like,
that would have meant what would almost surely been in the centers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Oh, yeah. They're going to put the stand up. I would rather have played the big one. The game itself uses a yoke just exactly like Star Wars. Makes sense. It's the designer worked on Star Wars. And you have two buttons for shooting your guns and two buttons for shooting your missiles. Sadly, Atari was unable to replicate the mental aspect of shooting the missiles. Sorry about that. Any game footage you see of the actual launching or flying of the Firefox, any of that stuff, that's all from the movie. So there's footage in this. Now, I read something that I can't believe, okay? They said that Clint Eastwood came in and recorded audio for I think like 52 phrases of audio in the game. Now, does the game have speaking in it? It does.
Sort of.
But it doesn't sound like Clint Eastwood. It sounds like robotics, like a process speaking.
It would have almost certainly not been playing off the disc. It would have been playing from a chip.
I had a couple of different versions of this to try, so I tried them. But the blog spot was the only place I read this. No one else. There's not a whole lot on this game, which is surprising. But if that's Clint Eastwood's voice in there, it doesn't sound like him. Unless, I don't know, maybe it's having a weird day.
Cyborg.
The game is very similar to Star Wars in that it's effectively an on-road shooter.
Yes.
Except in this, instead of a black playfield, you've got the video coming off of the Laserdisc. So again, your goal in this game is to steal the Firefox. And so the beginning of the game is you taking off the Firefox and you're being pursued by the commies. All right. There are various point totals you get for shooting MiGs But one of the things that is key in this game is your fuel supply. On your reticle in the game, it shows you how many missiles you've got left out of 4. It also shows you how much fuel you've got left, effectively. When you get shot, you lose fuel.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, once you take off into Firefox, the first thing you're going to see coming at you are like a series of circles. You know, like like Aquaman would make.
Yeah, almost identical.
And this is enemy radar. Okay. If you can manage to, don't ask me how this works. Don't ask me the logistics. But if you manage to shoot these radio waves, then you'll have an easier time because they haven't detected you with their radar. All right? I have no idea how that works. Once they've detected you, you get more enemies. So when you're in the air, you're confronted by not that many things. You can be confronted by basically gunfire. You can also be confronted by like missiles.
Yes.
And then on the screen, flying hither and yon are various spaceships, various airplanes, mostly MiGs, but occasionally you'll see the prototype Firefox coming after you. This also is very reminiscent of the second aspect of Mach 3. If you played that from behind, although I will say the footage in this. They got some awesome footage.
Yeah.
I thought to play over. I hope you like it because if you would have played this for any time, this is the footage you're stuck with. So anytime you shoot the enemy shots, you get fuel. Anytime they shoot you, you lose fuel, and also fuel goes away by itself.
Yeah.
If you're watching this at home, this game in Maine, I played this in Maine, so I don't know how this guy was making it not lose fuel.
Yeah.
But like, I have no way to cheat at this game. This guy is cheating. I'll tell you that right now.
Because otherwise you would see 2 seconds of gameplay.
Right.
So there's a reason for that.
So you take off, and then it gives you the choice several times. Do you want to go in the air or go on towards the ground?
Yeah.
If you go in the air, you're fighting in the clouds, but you use less fuel. If you go in the ground, you're on the ground. It's cooler looking. It's probably maybe a little bit easier. And then occasionally, especially on the ground, like every so often, there'll be a little tiny cut scene that'll show you flying through a canyon or something. So you can. It kind of gives you a basis for what's happening.
It sets the set piece.
As opposed to you just seeing a reticle.
Yeah.
You know, this gives you. So it's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
And then as you get through to the different levels, or the different stages of the level, when it lets you pick where you want to go, you'll get a little cutscene there too, and the terrain changes. And this is all the scenes. This pretty much happened in the game or in the movie. The
minus all the lit up bullets and missiles.
The animation on the aircraft stuff, awesome. I will say visually, this is one hell of a good looking game. They really knocked it out of the park. I mean, as far as laser disc visuals for this type of game, I would say it's near the top. I mean, in terms of what they provide. What it doesn't top out on is the amount of it. You know, and the funny thing is, I read that they selected like 40 minutes of video or something like that. I was like, where'd it go? Because I didn't see it. You know, but you know, they don't have that much video in this. Sometimes you'll need to use your missiles. That's when you're fighting like ground targets, or when you're taking on the prototype Firefoxes. Occasionally, you'll get to a point where it shows your guy perk up or down on the stick and you'll have to. It's almost always up, and it's you pulling back to go over like a set of mountains or a glacier, something like that. And then after you complete the stage, you land, which also happened in the movie. In the movie, you're refueled by a submarine, and then because you're trying to get back to North America. This game does have an ending. At the ending of the film, when he gets near the North America, he radios in. He does the same thing in here, and he says, "Ice some cold beer. I'm coming home." You know, but again, does not sound like who you would expect it to sound like. So this game has 2 fatal flaws. Fatal flaw on the first, it's too hard. There is too much on the screen. And it's a shame because the actual dog fighting is awesome.
Yeah, and that pretty much sums it up in a nutshell. The game is too hard, and it's to the point of you don't get to see anything. The repeating footage isn't an issue because you never see enough of the game to actually see much repeating footage. I think the choice of being able to fly high or low is cool. I think the concept, the concept's the movie concept. It's fine enough for a video game. I'm sure the set down version of this is probably killer, stellar, awesome.
Yeah.
If it moves, which I don't know. Does it move?
It doesn't move.
Okay. So less killer, stellar, awesome. What they did here was they tried to take the technology in a different direction, which many people tried to do during the Laserdisc era with varying success. I think as a Laserdisc game, this one is really okay. As an actual game, not an interactive movie like Dragon's Lair or Space Ace. As an actual game, I think they do pretty okay with this. As like a video game that's not just a spectacle, if there's just not enough here.
So when this was out in the arcade back in the day, I wanted to love it. All right, I didn't hate the movie, and the look of this game, it looked really cool, and I wanted to get into it. But the problem was, it was just not approachable, frankly. But it had another big problem, which I'll get to in a minute. But anyway, it was too short but that didn't matter, like Brent said, because you never got far enough. But also, it was kind of confusing. I was never 100% sure what was happening. And at the time, I would get killed and not know why. And it was often because I didn't move up or move down on the stick. It's funny, reading some docs on this, they talked about how you could there were areas in the game that would give you help, and it would cost you some fuel. I don't know what it's talking about. I don't know what that means. I don't know if I never saw them. I don't know how you activate them, so I don't understand. I'm not sure if that made the cut or not. I never saw that. But the game itself, as beautiful as it is, and the cool thing is when you shoot the planes and stuff, it's not like in Mach 3 where the explosion that follows them. I don't know how they do this. They sort of like they blow up, they're gone. It's cool. I don't know how they pull that off. There's also just too much crap going on that doesn't involve shooting other planes. Like, if you play a game like, I'm trying to think of a really good game that has this same sort of background. What's that? What's the Sega game? Was it Stellar something? Anyway, it's got the exact same background. It uses footage from Star Trek 2. That game feels more like a shooter than this does. I don't know what this feels like. It's very strange. And you'd think something that was based on Star Wars, on that sort of game. Star Wars, you'll get the feeling that you're just, that you're not really having, it doesn't make more sense. This is not as fun as Star Wars, even though it's got better everything.
Yeah, no, I agree, 100%.
So,
100%.
One of the things this also had in common with Star Wars was flaky hardware. So, back in the day, when I played this, it was often down a lot. It went down a lot. Well, it turns out this thing had, of course, there's always the ever popular, the drive getting screwed up on you, the laser disc. But this thing had another problem. This had a 19-inch Amplifone raster monitor. And so this thing was a specialized monitor, and it went down a lot. It had a flyback that was not that good. And so that killed it. Get this, Brent. This game had an Atari Quad Pokey in it.
Really?
For the sound. So think about this. These are still Pokies. They're shooting all this stuff out of here. This thing used so much power, it required 2 of Atari's AR2 power supplies. So this thing was...
my God.
Well, but you got to think, your power and a specialized monitor, plus all that hardware on the PCB, plus you're also running a Laserdisc player.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So you had all kinds of action right there to go on. So yeah, you get to see cool footage of Scandinavia and Greenland, but it comes at a cost, and the cost is big time. Now, you might think to yourself, I never saw this anywhere. It could have done that well. Well, according to Moby and Wiki, in Japan, this was listed as the 3rd most successful upright/cockpit arcade unit of March of 1984, And in the U.S., it was the top-grossing Laserdisc game on the Playmeter arcade charts in July of '84. So at least had a couple months where it made some money. This thing had a budget of $1 million for Atari. It was an expensive game. I heard they went over budget on it, too. Your mileage may vary. That's a lot of quarters, all right, you have to put into this thing. And even though they had a cool monitor and a quad pokey, it even had a headphone jack. You could plug headphones into it, a volume knob. So this was an advanced machine, like we said, that would have fit nicely into these centers. I don't think the flaky hardware would have been too friendly down that road.
Yeah,
So,
no kidding. That would have been a headache and a half having to repair this thing over and over.
So a fun game, Astron's Belt. That's what I was trying to think of. But this game's got a lot going for it, except for one thing. I did not find it very fun.
Yeah.
I did not find it very fun.
And unfortunately, that was the case for a lot of these Laserdisc games that tried to do something different. They did something different, but it wasn't always fun.
Yeah. So we can close the book, I think, on Firefox and the Atari Centers. Very interesting. I have to say, I didn't know anything about Atari Adventure Centers, and so I enjoyed that quite a bit, we hope you will join us for the next Atari Unlimited. This one, Brent, oh man, I don't know how we're going to pull this one off.
Aaron, if I don't keep you in constant fear on the Atari show,
Well, you've done it again, because we're going to be looking at Atari MIDI Revolution. Now,
yes.
my MIDI knowledge is not so good. Do I know what it is? Sorta. Do I know what MIDI stands for? I do not. Too dumb. I have no idea what that is. But I guess we'll find out. We'll be back with Atari Unlimited May 24th. Next week, the rotation spins again to Brent.
Yes.
So you can believe it. And we'll be back with our first offering of May. It'll be May 3rd. And we'll be taking a look at the Coco that night on the Coco Show. It's been a little while since we spun around the Coco Show. Brent, have you missed it?
I always like looking at the Coco.
Right. The Coco game this time around, I'm not even sure what we picked. I haven't looked this month. But it should be, I'm sure it'll be a good game. They usually pick good stuff. It says here, Wizard's Quest is what we're going to be looking at.
That's always fun.
Wizard's
I love
Quest. Well,
Wizard and Quest.
we don't know if it'll be fun. We haven't played it yet.
Well, that's true.
Hey, listen, one quick note, because it's due right around the corner, May 2nd, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's the International Computer Club, Brent. We've got a dozen presenters this year, this time around. And so you know it's going to be a big party with all your buddies. We're going to be live with the ICC on Twitch and YouTube, 4:30 Eastern Standard Time. If you're in the Discord, feel free to pop in, just hang out. It should be a good time. We'd love to see you there for International Computer Club this coming week.
Yes.
I think that's all we got. Debray, anything else you'd like to add before we take this to the house?
Nope.
Listen, everybody, I know it's sad that the Atari centers are closed. The Adventure Centers sound like a lot of fun, but you can have your own adventure in Atari. Just put on the back catalog of Atari Unlimited and get in a room with a strobe light, sit down. Now, Firefox never made it home, but just watch the movie.
There you go.
And put an Atari in front of the TV and just pretend. And we'll see you next time.
Have a good one, everybody.
Bye-bye.